Welcome back. BLBW Next Play. I'm Coach Damien.
Coach Steven.
Coach David.
And today we're talking about the development triangle. So the development triangle pretty much is parents, coaches, and players, and how we all work together for one common goal, which is, obviously to help the player reach their full potential.
Exactly.
And when it breaks down, as it has with, a lot of players we know, it's just very chaotic and a lot of fingers get pointed and stuff. But when everybody's on the same page, parent, player, and coach, it's just a beautiful thing, and it's fun to be a part of. So, as far as the parents are concerned, I think they are probably the key piece, in my opinion, as far as the development goes, because obviously they have to be reinforcing what we're teaching the player, what we're talking to them about, reinforcing the stuff we're having them work on and all that type of stuff. So, I think the parents are definitely, if I had to position the triangle, I would say the parents are probably the base of the triangle. They're the foundation. Would you guys agree to that?
I agree 100% with that. Because I think when the kids get that reinforcement from the parents at home, you see a different level of play from the kids also. Whether it's you see them improve through practices better, or you see them playing a lot differently in games. Or to our point, with our travel teams that we've had, stressing to our parents a lot. Make sure the kids do stuff at home. That's why a lot of times we make that huge jump with improvement on a lot of kids, because they doing this extra at home besides they just coming into practice with. We only get like an hour and a half, sometimes an hour, sometimes, but most of the time I think if the parents reinforce stuff at home, like it shows. It shows.
We talk about chain of command a lot, and parents a lot of times will skip themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So you have coach,
100%.
and then they immediately think it goes straight from coach to player.
Yeah.
And they skip themselves in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about a team scenario, right, your coach has 10 to 12 kids normally on a roster, and so that means that I have a part-time job, 10 to 20 hours with the team, right? And so as an individual, I don't have as much time with each kid. So now, right, maybe I'm giving your kid 5 hours of individual attention maximum, depending on who they are. And so if they're not getting that reinforcement at home like we're talking about, it falls through hard, and again, a lot of times parents skip themselves either because they think they don't have to be a part of the process, or nobody has made them aware that they're supposed to be a part of the process.
Yeah,
but
definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I would agree, though. They're definitely probably key piece, most important part.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Plays hand in hand. So.
Yeah. No, and I would also say, obviously support versus pressure, and identifying the difference. I think parents try to be supportive, but I think a lot of parents come across the wrong way in doing so.
Absolutely.
And I think they put a lot of unnecessary pressure on their players, especially at a young age. Like, obviously we all been doing this for years, man, so we've seen it firsthand, how a parent could put just a tremendous amount of pressure on the kid in the 4th or 5th grade, just because they may be the best player on their rec team or one of our travel teams or any travel team, and they get a little bit of notoriety, and now they want to start playing in exposure tournaments and going to all these elite camps and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that stuff. I think it all has a place, in the basketball landscape and the youth basketball landscape, but I also think that a lot of times parents are putting a lot of this stuff on their kids because they didn't do it themselves.
Exactly.
And they're putting this pressure on their kids rather than
kids.
just supporting them through the process, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
If their kid could play, just trusting in the process that the right people are going to find them.
I agree with that 100%, because the parents as much as the process as much as the coaches are, because we can give them the tools. Ultimately, what they do at home is really what's going to help them grow and get better. Yeah. And so, parents take a big part of that, development process. Whereas we've seen it a lot, especially with our travel teams. You see a difference in players where some players we see are going home with their parents working on their game, and some aren't. And so, that skill gap shows, but and we don't even have to say it. Like
That gap
a
is
lot of
big,
times
too.
we don't have to say it.
We
It
see
just
it all
shows
the
out there
time.
on the court, and
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it speaks for itself. But I think it's a huge part of the process, and understand the difference of not pressuring them to do too much, but also like I think that pressure needs to be applied sometimes to keep them active.
Yeah, you want to keep them kids on their toes. And,
Exactly.
I think a healthy, that healthy pressure is always good.
Exactly.
Never good
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah, there's something to be said about. I think my favorite kids to coach are the ones that don't realize how good or bad they are.
Yeah, I
they
would agree
just
with that.
they just love the game.
Yeah,
They come
for
in, they
sure.
work hard regardless.
Because
And,
we've all been there,
Exactly.
personally. Just love the game.
So, but yeah, you always say, right, if you can play, you can play.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot. Like, there's a lot of pressure from the way that youth sports are run to perform or to put on a show. But the reality is, if you can play, you can play. Like, there are people who are paid to find athletes. It's their job to go around the world or around the nation and find athletes.
Yeah.
So, with all the resources that are available, it's not hard to get the looks that you want, right? But you have to learn the system. And a lot of times, I feel like parents are more concerned with the political part of the game rather than understanding the system and positioning their kids to be seen by the right people.
Absolutely.
They would rather pay the right people or be a part of certain programs instead of learning the recruiting system and how it works, and so they get caught up in the mess.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties in with the coach part of the triangle, where you now have travel organizations or even school coaches who are selling things to parents who don't know any better. And so now you have this mess because guys who don't really care about the kids and then their development, are selling scholarships and exposure and all this other stuff, it muddies things up, and it makes it more complicated than it has to be.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me back to what I'm saying. Like, the kids who are the most fun to work with are the ones who don't know how good or bad they are.
Yeah.
Like, they have a certain understanding of where they're at. They know that what their expectations of their role are, but they don't have a big head. And they're also they have confidence, right? But they don't have overconfidence, and that's hard to do as a parent in today's environment. I get it. Like, it's really difficult to raise your child in a way that they can have both of those things because they're exposed to so much on YouTube and everything.
Yeah.
You're right, man. I mean, it's funny you say that, because I was talking to someone the other day, and they were just talking about, I may have been listening to something, they were talking about how they feel like parents in this generation over compliment their kids,
Yeah.
just because of so much negativity online. Your kid may be facing backlash because they're the best player. Kids may be talking junk to them and all of that stuff. So they are going above and beyond when it comes to just
Be
really
encouraging.
encouraging. And I think there's just a fine line. You can't, you have to be realistic with your kids. You can't have them thinking they're the best and they're really not, or they're the best and they haven't competed against anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of parents,
Are finding that are confused on that.
Yeah.
I feel like.
especially parents that we deal with, our particular demographic, I think, they're great parents, great kids, but a lot of them, are local good.
Yeah, they're local
You know what I'm saying? Like, once you're local good, let's put you against some of the best players in the state or the
Exactly.
region,
Or the
and
region.
let's see how good you
Like,
are.
it ain't even got to be the state. And I don't think a lot of parents understand that. I don't think they understand how big the basketball world truly is.
yeah,
And
it's
so
huge.
you may be big in this area, but
I
if
mean,
we
even
go
recruiting now,
Yeah.
overseas guys, I was watching
Exactly.
basketball the last 2 days, and it's literally overseas guys on every college roster now.
It is.
You know what I'm saying? From Germany, from France,
I mean, even
on every
G
single
League.
roster.
I saw somewhere there's an Arkansas school picked up a kid from the G
Yeah.
League.
Yeah.
So
They do things a lot differently than we do as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, people always talk about how Europeans focus more on fundamentals.
Yeah.
But another thing I think they do with kids differently is they gamify a lot of things.
Yeah.
They protect that innocence and that love.
Yeah.
And they make it fun for kids. Whereas we've got people who are cussing each other out at secondary travel games, thinking their kids are going to go pro, which is ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's one thing to be invested, but it's another thing to kind of get lost in that. Your kid it's really hard to predict at second grade that in the next 12 years your
trajectory
athlete's
of
going to
where
get in
he's
college.
going.
It's not happening.
Nah, it's not happening, man. So, I mean, next thing I would just kind of say is that car ride, that car ride home.
Oh, it's
And
important.
obviously, it's going to make or break what we can do as coaches, what we can do as trainers, and what our players are ultimately going to hear. Like what they're going to do as far as respecting what we're saying and what we're telling them, and their teammates also. Because I know for a fact that we've had parents in our programs who, those car ride home, they're getting down on players and pointing fingers at everybody but their child, and it shows in practice, their energy, their body language, what they say, because some of the kids will just flat out say it, and like, that's not you, that's your parent talking, because you could see the parent, on the sideline during the games just huffing and puffing and yelling and stuff and screaming. So that car ride home is important, man. I think parents have to definitely make sure they're being positive. They're not saying anything negative about the coach, about the player. Now, whatever feelings they have, keep them to themselves. I'm not saying they can't feel however they want to, but I think they got to be positive. They always got to be on the coach's side, because I've also not a ton, obviously, but I've been in those situations too where you have a kid who is hearing something different from their parent, but they need to be listening to you as the coach. Like, I know your dad telling you to shoot every time, but shoot 10%. Like, no, don't shoot every time. Let's run the offense. Still want you to be aggressive, because I know you work, all that other stuff, but let's do what coach tells you to do, not what your dad or your mom tells you to do, because Coach been doing this a while. Coach played professionally. Like, Coach is a little bit, more experienced than your father, know.
That's and I think that follows along what we were saying earlier. Like, parents are a huge part of the process. Yeah. Like, you can't come into a game and expect the kid to go 10 for 10 if you're not working with the kid at home.
100%.
So I think that's where a lot of parents are confused. Like, which we see them a lot. Parents come in, stand, yell at the kid that's shooting games, but they're not doing the work at home with their kids. So when they shoot the shot in game, airballing or other side of the rim, or it's not, they getting blocked.
The kid feel bad. Looking at the parent, because we got them kids in our program. Like, as soon as they miss a shot, they ain't looking at us.
They looking at the parent, right at the parent. Like,
and we're yelling at the kid, like, get back on defense. Like, next play.
So I think that's definitely huge, man. I think that falls in hand in hand also.
Yeah. They just get their priorities messed up. Like, a lot of times, especially when money's involved, parents want to get a certain service or whatever, and that's kind of our culture, right? Like, I paid for a service, I'm going to get that service.
I would agree.
And so when that translates to basketball, or travel sports period, the parent expects a certain performance from the child because they're paying, et cetera, and then but the kid's not even a good kid. Like, parents forget a lot of times that your child is a reflection of you. Like, if the team is a reflection of me, then your individual athlete is a reflection of you. And so your child fits within the cog that is the machine. And so, all those things that we're talking about, how they're getting on their case at home or on the ride home or whatever, it starts to come out in the way that the player treats their teammates and et cetera, and, again, because they're not really reflecting on themselves or reflecting on their individual responsibilities, because mom and dad aren't making them do that. They're always blaming everybody else, and they're really being set up for failure. So it's like, obviously you're going to have bad coaches. There's nothing you change a program, right?
No coach is perfect.
Right. We're not saying that in any way, shape, or form. If you're in a situation where you have a bad coach, and hopefully you know what you're talking about. If you're accusing a coach of being bad or not caring about your child, because that's a big thing that's going on right now. Like, people are like, this teacher's terrible, this school is terrible.
It's easy to point fingers.
Just because the teacher or coach is being a little hard or like expecting
more.
No, I don't want average. Like, I know you're capable of more.
Exactly.
So, to your point, like, a lot of teachers, good teachers and good coaches are being pushed out because they don't want to deal with that crap no more.
Right.
So, but so what, as far as you guys, and I know usually we're all on the same page and stuff, but what would you say that you need specifically from the parent as far as a kid's development? What do you think you need from a parent?
This started changing a couple of years ago with the parent meetings, just paying attention to you guys and just as I gained more experience. So I did the chain of command thing, like I said, right? You own the organization, and that trickles down to us as coaches. We're supposed to enforce that vision and give it to the kids. And so I started telling parents a lot, like, you're in the middle, right? You're between me and your kid. right? And my job is to be an extension of what you want your child learning at home.
Yeah,
If I'm not
100%.
doing that, then you should probably go find a different coach.
Yeah.
You know, we're not always going to see eye to eye on moral issues and this and that, but I should be reinforcing the character that you want your child to have. And so if I'm doing that and you're doing that and we got the kid in the middle, now we have a village situation going on where 24/7 he should be or she should be receiving the same reinforcement.
Yeah.
Right? And so to your point about the car ride home, I always tell my parents, let me be the bad guy. Like, it's my job to be the jerk. You know what I mean? Like, there are going to be times, obviously, where you need to discipline your child and this, that, and the other. But if you would allow me to be the bad person, be the mean person, and be hard on your kid, and you focus on being the person who gives them a hug and reinforces them, now you got like a good cop, bad cop situation going on where, you know, the kid knows they're going to go to practice and coach is going to be hard on them. But when I get home and I cry and complain to mom, they'll be like, oh, yeah, come here, sweetie, you know, or dad. And then we're like, well, let's talk about why that's important, you know. And if we're on the same page in that situation, it becomes a lot easier. And I think that that is the most important part, right? Is that the parent is active in understanding what the coach is trying to accomplish, and then they're reinforcing those things at home. You know, and obviously the kid is going to decide whether or not they want to go and practice extra hours and stuff like that. And when it comes to sports, and that's the last thing, I always tell parents, like, sports is really close as you're going to get sometimes to life or death situations where you have to make decisions under pressure in a split second, and it matters, right? Because there's a score on the board. And so, like, your child isn't always going to perform well in those situations. So taking the time to, like, accept that we're using our time on and off of the court to reinforce what's going to make the kid a better person.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about before. Like, when parents have their priorities out of line, when they're focused on winning, they're focused on stats, they're focused on scholarships, you miss out on that part.
Yeah.
Sports should be something that helps your kid to be put under pressure, right, to perform in situations where they have to make those split-second decisions, and understand that the work they do on a day-to-day basis is laying the foundation for them to be successful. So regardless of whether or not they get a scholarship, they're going to have that process built into them, right? And that helps them everywhere else.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I feel like the parent is so important, right? But
for sure.
if I'm not communicating that, that's on me. You know, and I think great coaches are good at that. I really believe that at the highest level, the best coaches in the world, they're not like, when you have a staff, you've got somebody who's doing X's and O's. You've got somebody who's doing skills. So the thing that sets the head coach apart, you know, Phil Jackson, is the culture. That's the guy who's bringing the vision. He's bringing the culture. He's establishing the standard, and he's hiring and picking people to be in certain positions to execute that. You know, and so now when we have a good crew, a good team, that trickle-down effect starts to make itself a reality with how we play.
Yeah.
You know, and parents are a part of that. They just,
for
they
sure.
always skip themselves. They're a part of the culture.
And I always, like, they matter. Like, what they say and do with them at home matters. You know, I always tell my parents that, even at the parent meetings I have with them, I let them know, like, hey, you know, depending on how y'all are reinforcing this to them, depends on how competitive we're going to be as a team.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about winning or losing. It's about, my goal for them is just, you know, be the most competitive we can be, no matter who we're playing against.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we can't really be that competitive if I'm only practicing them with 2 times a week for an hour and a half. Like, really, you know, you're going to get a lot of work out of that hour and a half because the way I structure practices, but, like, think about how much better we could be if the parents are reinforcing 15 to 45 minutes at home,
Yeah.
what we're working on already within the practices. And then also, I tell the parents also, you know, to hold a little accountability for the players, because it's a triangle effect, like you said earlier. You know, like, you know, the players know what drills they need to be doing. You know, so I tell the parents, so I tell the parents, like, they know what they're doing. Like, really want y'all to and like, I give them a guide, like a kind of like a goal sheet or a guidance of how to use that reinforcement at home.
Yeah.
Like, you know, tell them, you know, make sure they're practicing high intensity, make sure they're sweating, they're going hard, you know, because if they just going through the motions, it's wasted work. Yeah, that's wasted work.
Yeah.
So that's why I say with my parents and my parent meeting all the time, in which it shows, you know, from the teams that I've had, I can definitely tell, like, who's doing the work at home and who's not.
Yeah.
And even the parents, and it shows with the parents.
Yeah.
The parents come up to me asking questions, and so that's how I know, like, yeah, they're doing the stuff at home, they're doing it right, and like, they understand, yeah, my kid is good, but they got to work on this to get better.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, man. Like I said, it just needs to be parents on the same page as coaches. You know, don't have to agree with everything, but just it has to be consistent as far as the message they're receiving. You know, just because we've all had that one or two parents, or you know, that one or two players who, you know, their parents are talking junk about you at home, and their actions and how they behave towards you reflect it. You know, it shows. You know, kid, you know, starts getting a little disrespectful, starts getting a little mouthy. You know, you're drawing up a play, kid ain't even paying attention, looking away. Like, that's coming from home. You know, so I think always making sure parents understand, like, we have to be on the same page. My voice has to be the loudest on the court, you know, when it comes to basketball. And to, you know, Dave's point, just continue to reinforce those habits that they're already trying to teach them at home. Now going to translate off the court, you know, being a good person, being the hardest worker, being organized, being consistent, showing up. You know, how many times come spring we get that call or that email, hey, coach, we're going on vacation, or, you know, Johnny can't come to this practice. He, you know, what's he has to study for the EOGs. Yeah. How you going to study for the EOGs? Like, you go to study for something that was an entire year. Like, you go just, there's no way. So, I mean, yeah, I think, you know, we all kind of agree parents have to show up, you know, be consistent, and just be that voice, that extension of us as coaches, as we are an extension of them as parents, you know, when they're with us, you know, just positive reinforcement. You know, your coach is not always right, but you got to listen to him. He wants what's best for you. Your teammates aren't always going to be the best, but you pick them up. You know, you don't talk down on your teammates or make them feel like they're beneath you, especially if you're one of the better players. So, I definitely agree, fellas, for sure, man. Those parents are key to that triangle.
You can go the other way too, right? Sometimes, like, the kid wants to listen to the coach because they have a not so good relationship with mom or dad. And so now they're conflicted on the court, like they're doing what coach is asking to do, and it's working, and then mom and dad are still getting mad at them even though it's working because they want to see something different. So like, that's another thing to look out for.
Nah, we've been there, man. But
I mean, I think all falls on the parents just want their kids to succeed.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I tell my players all the time, like, you ain't got to succeed in the same thing as everybody else. So I sat in the parent meeting also. Like, your child may do something better than others, but at the end of the day, it's all a whole group effort. You know, because when they look at the wins, when you look at if winning, it's not about winning or losing. It's about performance. And when you go to I go to a lot of tournaments, and a lot of parents, a lot of other coaches, they commend players on my team just because of the level of play and effort. So, you know, that's what it boils down to. And a lot of my parents that I talk to, my parent me understand, like, my expectation is effort. And so that's what they, you know, really are screaming from the stands, like, just move around, do something. Like, so, you know, I think that's why we have a good group of parents this year.
All right, so now, you know, obviously that second side to the triangle is the coach's side. So, you know, we won't probably... The parents is obviously important, so we spent a lot of time on that, which I think was necessary, making sure that they get our just opinion on how we feel about how important they are, their importance in the whole triangle. But the coach's side is obviously extremely important. So I think one of the things about coaching is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So to me, that's kind of like, you're not always going to be liked. Like, I don't mind being, to your point, I don't mind being the bad guy. I don't mind if a parent doesn't like me, especially if I know in my heart I'm doing what's best for the player and I'm doing what's best for the team. So I'm all for being a bad guy. I'm all for being an asshole. Like, you don't have to like me, but, you know, obviously I'm knowledgeable. My resume speaks for itself, and I'm going to always do what I feel like is best for the child, and I'm always do what's best for the team. You know, do my best to treat every player just, you know, the same as far as respect and, you know, coaching them up and making sure they get the best experience and making sure I'm pouring into them as much as I can. Like, I don't care if it's, you know, the worst player on the team or the best player. You know, they're going to get that same attention from me. Obviously, in the game and stuff, when I'm coaching, that stuff is always going to be different. That's going to be based on, you know, what player A could do better than player B, or vice versa. You're always going to play, obviously, the players who give you the best chance to win. I believe every player deserves a chance to play on your team. That's just something I've always believed in. That's how I was coached. But obviously, how much you play or don't play depends on you. What you do in practice, what you do in the game. Because ultimately, you could be the best practice player and not perform well in the game. So, I think that's important, man. Just always being honest and always being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be the bad guy. Be that voice that the player needs to hear. I mean, we've lost players not telling them what they want to hear, not telling the parents what they want to hear through the years, and I'm fine with that, because I think when, we do the right thing like we try to do 99% of the time, it not only helps the player, whether they stay with us or not, but it helps us as coaches too. And I think our program and the growth we've had over the past, several years is a testament to that. Our character and how we are willing to have those tough conversations and not lie to a kid or a family about how good they are and how they're a game changer and stuff. And we just always keep it real with them. So
I think I think that separates us from everybody else. To be honest with you,
for sure.
I think that's why a lot of people they may not agree with us, but they respect it. So because of how honest we are with them, also. It's happened numerous times we've came across it, or we had to have conversations with certain players and let them understand, we can give you the routes, but it's your choice to choose which way you want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So to your point, the coaches are a very important process to that. And so, when we talk about comfortability with being uncomfortable, that shows on your team. If you're, especially in pressure situations where you're comfortable, if you're comfortable in those pressure situations, you're more able. Because I know with me when I coach, when I'm comfortable in those situations, I can think more clearly. I think, and it shows with my players, because then I can because a lot of times you lose players that haven't been in those positions before. They start to break down or they start to freak out, and so, as a coach, if you're comfortable in those positions, you can keep those guys and girls under control. So that way you can get the most out of them in those pressure situations.
Yes, I
think so. I think that's a huge thing. Just from my coaching experience, because I came across it a lot. I had people break down, people getting upset because of certain situations, foul trouble, whatever it is. And hey, just got to keep them locked into what's going on, so that way you can get ultimately what you want out of the situation. It may not always be a win. I came across a lot of situations where we're on the other end of winning, but we've had that chance, and that's all that matters most. Is having that chance, because if you give yourself that chance, you got that chance to either go wherever you want. Because at the end of the day, even if you say you miss a game winner, or they get a game winner on you, which I've been on both ends, you still can stand out, because again, you drawing attention from that crowd, because this is a close game and people want to see those type of games. And so the way to get in those close games, is through being comfortable being in difficult situations. So
I think to your point, right, about knowing without a doubt your intention, and I think that's something that people can pick up on. When your intents are good and you're focused on doing the best you can to help kids develop and grow, kids especially can pick up on that. And the younger they are, the more they pick up on that, and the more they're willing to gravitate to that. As they get older, and they develop their trust issues or their traumas or whatever, it takes time to gain a kid's trust. And over the years, I think we've just been patient. People have their certain perceptions of how we handle things and how we go about stuff. But me first, I know that ultimately I'm a much better skills trainer than I am a coach. I've had to learn a lot about being a coach. You used to always say to be comfortable who you are when I was first started with you guys, and that was something that I really had to learn about myself. I've been in leadership positions in different arenas, but as a coach, it's different than being a player. There are carryovers and things like that, but there's different dynamics. We were talking about dealing with the parents, and then dealing with the players, and then dealing with how the players get along with the parents, or how the parents get along with the players, or whatever. If if you see fit to get into that arena, because you don't have to as a coach. Like, you can be successful and never touch any of that.
Yeah.
But I just think that if you really care about the players as individuals, at some point you're going to learn about them, you know, and how you handle that is really important. And that's a place where I think I struggled, because I am so heavily invested that I forgot about non-negotiables. You know, I think that all great coaches have non-negotiables. Like, you're not going to come into my gym and do this, right? And when you bend on those things, you know, because you care about somebody or you're trying to deal with something that's external from the game, it has a big effect on what's going on inside the lines and the results of the play and how the team views you and things like that. You know, and so I think something that I have done well over the years is I'm always going to go home and blame myself for everything. You know, and look in the mirror and pray and meditate or whatever and reflect and look at you guys and look at other coaches and draw from them, like, what do their teams do well and why do their teams do that better than my teams? You know, and watch practices and how you guys run things and pick up on that. And, you know, we stress that a lot to the kids too. Like, you know, learn without being told. Like, I shouldn't have to speak to you all the time for you to learn. And I've picked up a lot of things from you guys and Coach Carr and other people in the area just by paying attention. You know what I mean? And being willing to do that. And so all that to say that, you know, if your coach stops learning, then you have a problem. Like, because a coach, ultimately, we're teaching kids how to learn. We're teaching them how to deal with that process of losing and winning and getting better and returning and going over and over. And I talk to parents all the time about the wall. Right, is what I call it. Like, you're gonna reach a certain point, right, where you've progressed, and then you're gonna hit that wall, and you're gonna beat your head against that wall, trying to figure out what to do, and then you find a way to overcome it, and then you kind of coast again, and then you hit the wall again. And so, but that's like a constant process that never ends. If you're trying to make yourself a better person, you're always gonna encounter that obstacle, and then you quit or retire when you decide, like, I'm satisfied with where I'm at. I'm gonna cruise. That wall's not worth it. You know, and as a coach, I think that how do you, like, I don't think that's definable when you're dealing with people, right? Because people, like, kids grow up, and then another generation comes up, and then another generation comes up, and maybe the problems change, but people are still people, you know, and, like, you don't have to, I think there are a lot of people who sell themselves short, especially if we're talking about, like, rec situations, where they say that they can't be as good as this or that. When, like, you know, if you're reflecting on yourself and you're constantly learning, you can be good at anything, you know, especially coaching, because it's just, you're navigating people and helping kids to develop certain skills and then be in the right positions at the right time. And those are all things that you can learn, right? You don't literally have to have your hands on the basketball. Obviously, your experience helps. If you've played and trained or whatever at a high level, it makes that process a lot easier. But, you know, finding ways to motivate culture, like I was talking about, and developing good culture, having those non-negotiables, setting standards, and then educating them on what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it. You don't require actual playing experience to do that. Like, you can help a lot of people, you know, just by being invested. And I think, like, when everything's watered down and everybody's claiming to be at a certain level and to say that they're this and they're that, but they don't do that part. They don't hold themselves accountable. You know what I mean? They just go out and tell people, like, hey, I'm this good, you know, and then you have people who are, like, they don't retain players for even a year, you know, or longer than a year. You know, and we've had a lot of turnover over the years, but typically we keep, you know, per team 2 or 3 players for a course of 4 or 5 years. And I think that that's kind of average, unfortunately, with the way that the travel industry is right now. You know, but those kids turn out well. Like, they don't necessarily end up being tremendous basketball players, but they end up being good kids, and they end up being good people. And that's something that I'm really proud of. You know, and it's not to say that we're not capable of coaching or training at a level that's higher than that, but that's just never been our priority as an organization. And people, because of what's going on around us, people get caught up in all that noise. You know, like, if you don't want what I have for you, why am I going to stress myself about trying to make you want it? You know what I mean? And so that's hard to identify for me, again, like, loving everybody equally, but also feeding the mouth that wants to be fed. You know what I mean? Like the kids who desire it, the families that want it, you know, and not just the parents are like, my kid wants to train and blah blah blah. No, your kid does not.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the way they practice and play.
Yeah.
You know, and so inspiring kids and connecting the dots for them of why they should work hard, because not everybody cares about basketball. Even though they're playing on the team and their parents are paying for them to play, they don't necessarily care about the sport.
Yeah.
They're being made or for whatever reason, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't connect that dot for the kid about why they're doing what they're doing, it never becomes important to them,
Yeah.
and they never become invested.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
So yeah, there's a bunch
No,
of
that's a really good point though, because I mean, like you said earlier, like, you know, as a coach, you still got to be able to learn, you know, and so I think that's really what, you know, I think we all can agree on that. But you know, to a certain point in my coaching career, that's really what helped me. You know, learning from you guys, learning from Coach Carr, learning from a whole bunch of different coaches. You know, because I think if you're learning from the coaching community, you know, you're really widening your vast of what you can coach.
Yeah, for sure.
And so definitely widening how you can coach players also in different ways, which I think is a huge thing. Because I see it still today. A lot of coaches still coach the same way that they coach like 20 years ago. And like they not successful anymore. Like whereas they was successful 20 years ago. And so like they not evolving, whereas the game is always changing.
Yeah, the
so
game's changing.
like how David said, like the next generation, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah,
And so
for sure.
I think that's like he really hit the nail on the coffin with that. That's a really good point. Like, as a coach, you gotta be able to learn, because if not, you're not gonna be as successful as you was.
And I think, I mean, just, you know, as far as the coaches are concerned, I think really just getting the kids to understand, you know, especially let's say the training, the practices, or whatever it may be. Like, it's not always about the highlights.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh
like
my
it's
God.
it's the habits.
Who
And I think,
mixtape? The
yeah,
ball is
I mean, every kid wants a highlight.
Hate it nowadays.
I like
A
that.
step back
Habits
three,
of
you know, like
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's just really making sure the kids and the parents understand that those basic drills that we're doing, like the form shooting, every clinic, every camp, you know, the stationary ball handling we're doing, every clinic, every camp, like the right hand, the left hand finishes, like all that stuff is important.
Exactly.
Like I can't, you know, I was talking to the one dad in there today. He was talking about how his son was wowing, you know, his teammates at rec practice doing a Euro step. I'm like, he struggles using his left hand. Like let's work on the left hand first, and then we'll get to the Euro step. But we don't need to worry about the Euro step until we can finish with both hands. Like that's working backwards.
Yeah.
You know, like let's focus on working on his left hand. I think a lot of times parents get kind of caught up, players get caught up in that stuff. They get bored with the basics,
Yeah.
you know, because of this social media microwave result,
Oh,
you know,
man.
that phase that we're in.
It's the worst.
This era that we're in, and it's just, you know, it's bad, man. And I think a big, you know, going back to the accountability is, as a coach, I've always been the first to hold a kid accountable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't, you know, to David's point, tell me you want to be this type of player, or, you know, you see this kid playing for this trial program, you know, whatever it is, all-star team, you know, and you're saying, you know, that's your friend and you want to get to that program. Maybe you play for us, maybe you play for another local team, but you're not putting in the work that kid is.
No.
Like, you're not doing anything to put yourself in a position to get to where he's at, but you want to go play with him.
Exactly.
You know, just because you can. You know, maybe you're going to, you know, put the money up and the organization's going to put you in there. And I don't think that's ever good. You know, and I think parents they lose sight in that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's frustrating because we've lost, you know,
A lot of players.
teams, you know, because of that, you know, because they, you know, they're following the kid who may be on that level, and they all think they're on that level, but then they end up going to the same organization,
Be on the
but
B
playing
team.
for the regional team, while their friend that they thought they were going to play was playing for the
National
national team,
team, yeah.
you know, or, you know, a kid
make the
goes,
team.
exactly,
Yeah.
couldn't even make the team, you know, so now they're playing for another team.
Make
you know?
their own teams too.
Yeah, exactly.
Our parents want
Exactly.
to do.
So I mean, as far as like the highlights and habits, you know, just kind of quickly, so we don't, you know, dwell on it too long. Like, where do you think it kind of gets lost? Like the highlights and the habits.
I think it's, to be honest, man, like it can get lost at any point, to be honest with you, because we've all seen it. Like, we're in situations where we're up or down, like a large amount, and then players, we always say, we gotta go get mine. Like that's the kind of mode they kind of get in, because they losing the bigger picture of the whole thing. And I think it falls along that triangle, whereas the coach has to hold them accountable, keeping them locked in on what they need to be focused on. The parents need to also have, even if it's a large amount or up or down, the parents still stuff they got to be worked on. And so the parents got to understand that, and the player too. Like, the player got to understand, like, if you try to reach a certain level, where if it's you're in high school trying to reach collegiately, like, that's not what they do at the collegiate level.
Or like, kind of what I mean is, like, let's say we're working with one of our high school players, right?
Yeah.
And one of our elementary or middle school players walk into the gym, and we're doing, maybe what is a more advanced drill with them. But then when we work with that younger player or that player who's not as experienced, they want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
They want to, be dribbling, 2 balls or whatever we may be doing, a more advanced drill, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you have that conversation with the parent? Like, hey, this is what they need to work on. It may be boring, I get it, but while we're working out, guaranteed we're gonna see kids. The kid we got coming up next shooting threes, or working on a Euro step, or working on something they have no business doing. As opposed to coming into the gym, we're finishing up our workout, they're in their form shooting. They're in there working on their right hand, left hand legs, getting warmed up. So when it's time for us to do what we do, they're ready to rock and roll. Even today, the clinic. Like, how many kids were in there shooting threes that had no business hitting the side of the damn backboard?
Almost all of them.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's what I kind of mean, like the highlights and the habits, and how, as a coach, do you make your players and your parents trust what you're doing?
I say just be realistic with them, because I tell my players all the time, like, you can't move on to something. You can't move on to Euro steps, like the step backs and all that stuff, if you can't make a simple dribble pull up 5 times without changing it. If I tell you do 5 dribble pull ups, right, and they go in, we see it all the time. They come down, they do 1 dribble pull up, another kid come down, do a step back dribble pull up, like another kid come down, do a spin move to dribble. Like, nah, like, I asked for one simple thing. And so I think being realistic with them, telling their parents, like I tell my parents all the time, like, hey, your kid needs to work on this before we move on to the next thing, especially with individual workouts. Like, if you want to do those advanced stuff, you got to show them you can do some fundamental stuff first. Because the building blocks is important. Yeah. Like, you can't go out, nobody out the gate is coming out doing Euro steps or coming out spin moves and all that, like stuff they see on highlight tapes. Yeah. Like, at some point in those players' careers, as you see her making those highlights, they're practicing that.
Well, we all know the kid who could do a step back 3, but can't do
can't catch and shoot, can't do a left hand layup or a right hand layup. They're left handed. Like, all that stuff matters. Or we know the kid that trying to do a reverse layup, or like, coach watch this dribble on the baseline, literally throw it under the back, hit the bottom of the backboard.
Or like, when the jelly shit was popping. Yeah, can't do a regular. What you think, Dave? Like,
I'm culture first, and so I've been blessed that I have kids who I've trained or coached for a long time that I still have good relationships with. So I try to make it a point to create an environment where my kids who are coming up are going to run into those kids. Yeah. And so one of 2 things are going to happen, right? You're going to come in and you're going to see that kid working like you're talking about, or you're going to play that kid and see how they play. And so when the kid starts to talk about wanting to be like that or be that good, obviously we can talk about Steph, right? Steph Curry does his fundamental shooting all the time. Yeah. But you're not going to run into Steph in the gym and see him doing his form shooting. Yeah. You know what I mean? You get on YouTube and look at it. So when these kids come in and they get to, like, right here, I see you, right? I see this kid that I see fry everybody all the time, or they're a freshman on varsity or whatever it is, right? They get X amount of minutes. You know what I mean? It's really easy for me to look at that kid and be like, okay, you want to be like them? Cool. How often do you form shoot? All the time, right? How many form shots have you been shooting? Like, have you shot over the last years? And like, it's really always the same answer. A lot. You know what I mean? Like that eye roll, like
the exact lot. I want to know the exact number.
You know what I mean? So like, the kid who has been putting in the time is honest about it. Like, I form shoot all the time. I've shot a lot. Coach D'Lo will come in, right? And he was doing form shooting every single camp. He'd come in at summer camp, and he's doing form shots before he starts to go out and shoot threes, and obviously all the kids were looking up to him like, oh, he's so cool, whatever. And so it was really easy to have that conversation with the kids at camp and be like, what do you guys see Coach D'Lo coming to do every day?
Every day.
Form shooting. Like,
Not coming to hand, jacking up threes.
That's no step back threes, no logo threes, none of that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I say to the kids to make it easy for them is like, look, every highlight that you see is a string of basic skills.
100%.
If you can do all of the fundamental stuff, the highlight will happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, you know, if you can do it, master it at the most basic level, then it's gonna it'll come together on its own. Especially if you're doing it the right way. And that's where I think the disconnect happens with a lot of kids when they go to the Y. We talk about that all the time. My coach used to say, you're going to do this the right way, or you can go play in the men's league at the Y. Is that where you want to end up? He used to use that as a threat, like for our high school boys when I was in high school. But like the kids, they'll go to the Y and they'll come and tell us they shot around for 2 hours, but really what they did was they shot step back threes and pull ups and combos, and they got up maybe 100 makes in 2 hours or whatever it is, and none of it was intentional. But if nobody's telling them that, right, in a way that they can receive, and so going back to me as a coach, I'm going to tell you as many times as I can think of how to tell you something, right? But at some point it becomes you. You're the problem now, right? I've reiterated this, I've restated it, I've demonstrated it to you, right? I've broken it down into the smallest pieces possible. Now I got to look at your kid and be like, look, are you dumb? Like, I've asked kids that before, like, are you dumb? Are you just not listening? Do you not care? Like, what is it? What's the disconnect here? And you'd be like, well, obviously I'm not dumb. I'm like, okay, I just wanted to make sure. Like, it's all right if we need to work on that. And then, obviously, in today's climate, again, I'm blessed that nobody's come from my head yet, because I've talked to a lot of kids like that where I've just been really playing with them. Like, at this point, I got to question whether or not your brain cells are connecting. And if they are working the way they're supposed to do, like, do you have a problem with me? Do you hate basketball? Do you hate shooting? Like, what's the issue here? But then to your point, right, once we've covered those bases and you've told me I want to be a great shooter, okay, you've made your desire clear. I've made the requirements clear, and now you're failing to meet the standard. Now we have a problem where discipline needs to be kicked in. But like a lot of parents skip that conversation, right? They just go straight to beating the kid over the head. Like, the kid doesn't understand why and what for, blah blah blah. And I'm not saying that you have to do that all the time, but at some point when they're old enough to think for themselves, and if you want your athlete to think for themselves, that conversation becomes important.
It does. I see it all the time, man. Like, kid go shoot shots in games and there's no point for him, so, which I think that he really hit the nail on the head.
How many times do you get that shot a game?
Or how many times can you make it? Like, the same exact shot. I ask my players all the time. Like, I mean, and sometimes I'm like, I may come across rude when I ask them the question, but, it's just being real with them, getting them to understand. Like, like, if we can shoot, can you make 10 out of 10 of those shots? Like, literally, people shooting over people, or you trying to make a spin move, running layup. Like, can you make 10 out of 10? No? Okay, then maybe that's not the shot we need to take. So, and that's happened numerous of times, and I think that's what separates us from a lot of other coaches, because a lot of other coaches are encouraging that, to be honest with you. Like, they're encouraging those wild shots, whereas, we're not encouraging it, but at the same time, we're saying, if you're going to do it, work at it. Like, don't just come out here doing it, and it's your first time doing it in a game. Like, that don't make no sense. So,
the number of hours that star players have put into what kids consider a highlight. And that's the other conversation you have to have, too. Like, dude, the number of times that Steph or whoever, Kyrie, those guys have worked on that, in their warm-ups too. Like, half shooting logo shots is a part of Steph Curry's
every time before he goes
shooting, like putting English on the ball and hitting a certain part of the backboard is part of Kyrie Irving's warm-up. Like, they do that stuff before games or in their training sessions on a regular basis. Like, they don't just come out and expect it to happen.
Right, so the last part of that triangle, that last side, the player side, obviously. So there's two things I kind of think about when it comes to that player side, and that's, the work ethic and the player showing up, not just physically but mentally. I think that's, those are non-negotiables in my book. Like, I don't want the player who's just there, taking up space. I always want my player, they're locked in, ready to get better, ready to work, whether it's a training session or a practice. Like, I want you here with me. I tell those guys all the time that I coach, when you walk through this gym door, when you step between those lines, we got to be locked in.
Exactly.
Because obviously we don't get the most talented kids, and even if we did, it wouldn't matter. Like, I want you here because you're going to always get me. Whatever I have going on at home, whatever may be going on in my life, like, I'm never going to bring it to the gym with me. I think the gym is the best place to get a release from that stuff, in my opinion. And it's always been that way for me as a player. Anytime I had an issue or something was bothering me in my life, like if I was on the court, basketball court, outside, indoor, I was at peace. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was my safe haven. So, I tell players to, look at it almost that way, but that work ethic has to be on point. No coach, I don't think can coach a kid with a poor work ethic.
No.
Like, a kid has to want it. They have to be willing to do things the right way. They have to be willing to be coached. I think that's extremely important. I can't stand the kids who think they know it all, or they may have worked with this trainer and he told them, or this they were coached by this coach and they told them something totally different. It's like, everybody coaches differently. Everybody trains differently, and I'm always going to tell that player, I respect what your coach, what your trainer tells you. This is just how I do it. I don't think there's really, in my opinion, a right or wrong way to do stuff, but I think there is a fine line between
what's going to
work and what won't. What's going to translate and what won't. Whether it's training, whether it's coaching. Like, if I'm telling you to cheat your line, and if I'm telling you to you're 2 passes away being helped, if I'm telling you to force your man baseline, but your rec coach is telling you don't force him baseline because I'm going to get beat. Like, at some point, I will tell you if your coach is wrong, because you should have a teammate in help position. So you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's what 5-on, that's what 5-on-5 basketball is about. If you're denying and you do get beat, if you're going to get beat if you're playing good defense, if you're playing tough defense. Trust and believe your teammate is going to be there to help, or to just slow the other guy down, bluff him back. But obviously you still got to get back on your man. But I think that's been a big thing that I've noticed as time has passed, and over the years as the game has evolved and changed. Just making sure that when I'm with a kid training or coaching a kid, that their work ethic, that box is always being checked, and their mental ability is on par with their physical ability. And sometimes you may get the kid who physically could do it, but just their mental ain't there. They the head case. They get in their own way. I can think of tons of kids who've been that way, and when I've been able to coach or train them, I try to just pour into them. And just as long as they're working and they're consistent with what they're doing, just try to really be that positive reinforcement. Like, I have a young man right now. Plays for a local high school in the area. He's really going through it mentally because he's not playing as much as he wants to. He believes he's better than kids on his team. Knowing some of those kids, I believe he is also, but, I'm not talking negative about that coach. I'm like, listen, your coach may see something different. What are you doing in practice? Are you, jogging to drills, or are you sprinting? In between transitions, what are you doing during the game? Are you pouting because you're not playing, or are you up clapping, being a good teammate? Being a good teammate. Are you really just make sure you're checking all the boxes before you go talk to that coach? Because what I don't want you to do is go talk to that coach, and now all of a sudden
he's got a list.
He has a list of why you're not playing, because he asked the coach why he wasn't playing, and I think the coach said he has to be more aggressive, which I absolutely hate that. Like, never tell a kid that.
That's a bland answer. Great.
Yeah, cookie cutter answer. And then what else did he tell a kid? Man, so he had to play harder, and he had to stop getting beat on defense. But mind you, the kid played 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes of basketball in the game. They're the only game he's played, 2.5 minutes. So to tell a kid he has to play better defense
For 2.5
For
minutes.
2.5. But this could be a practice thing too, and that's what I told both him and his father. Maybe you're getting beat in practice too. So it's just, the coach is not going to trust you until you could show him in practice that you could defend.
Against guys that's
Absolutely.
on the team.
Yeah, like you got to show him in practice what you could do before he's going to trust you in the game. So let's work on that. But what are you guys' thoughts on it?
I think that works hand in hand, especially with players that, because I've came across that too. Come across it now actually, where a lot of players saying like, they coming to me, and I guess they know they get real answers from me. So that's why they ask me like, Coach, why am I not playing? Like, Coach, what's wrong with me? I'm like, yo, what we're doing in practice? What we're doing with the playing time we get? Like, are we using be active, or are we using just go through the motions? Are we getting after it in practice with high intensity, or you just out there? That's what you got to really think about. And so, I think with that triangle, that player's aspect, that accountability for holding that player accountable with what they do is important. They can't, because I tell my players all the time, as they grow older within our travel teams, the older you get, the more important your level of play becomes. You can no longer just be out there.
Yeah, you can't hide.
You can't hide.
That's
You have to do something.
Especially high school, college.
Whether it's rebounding, be in the right position, holding people accountable, telling everybody what they need to be doing, communicating, bring something, and that's something that I'm coming across with dynamic with teaching to my players now with my high school group that I have, and telling girls, like, I had actually some girls, pull me to the side and ask me what can they bring, and I tell them, like, this is what I believe you can bring to the table, but what if you do it or not? It's
everybody want to score. Everybody want to score 10, 15, 20 points. Like, be a star in your role.
Exactly. And the role is not the same as everybody else's. Like, the role is different, because whereas the high school, like, I see a lot of high school teams where you got guys that are captains on the team, not leader, but they may not even score in games, but I seen one kid last year, he was taking charges, giving rebounds, making sure guys were set, and he averaged probably 4 or 6 points. And he's still playing collegiately right now. So, I think you can get noticed with a lot of different things if you buy into it, and so to say. I think that's what players are losing a lot too with this highlight era. Everybody want to be the 30-point scorer, or everybody want to be the stat sheet stuffer. Like, you can still get attention for doing other things too. So
100%.
Yeah, I think unless you live in a really obscure area, it's a pretty even playing field.
Yeah.
So I have this conversation with the parents, especially with kids that I train a lot, right? They're going to find you, right? And so as things move forward with like NIL and stuff like that, and social media and everything, all this stuff blows up, it's gonna come to a head, right? You're gonna have kids who just have a good brand, and because they have a good brand, they're gonna get some kind of opportunity. Then you're gonna have kids who have absolutely no brand, but they can play. They work hard or whatever, and they're gonna find their opportunities. And when these people, all of these guys get to college or whatever, like, that's going to be like, the coaching scheme isn't going to change unless people start to really care about money. Winning is winning, and you do your recruitment to win, right? And coaches are looking for a certain thing. And so for the work ethic and the mental part, right? If you're coming to camps and clinics and workouts and trying to get a scholarship and you don't check those 2 boxes, it becomes really apparent when you're 1 out of 10 kids who clearly doesn't work hard and clearly doesn't want it. You know what I mean? And so with the whole social media thing, it's obnoxious. So it's like, to me, the mental thing is the separator, right? In a world where anybody can make it, anybody can get their opportunity, it's going to boil down to what's going on up here, right? Because you have access to trainers, you got access to YouTube, you got access to any resource that you need for free practically, and you can, if you're willing to be that guy, that dog who works really hard and is invested in yourself and is chasing that dream for real, like, you're going to get your shot now more than ever, because the environment is set up for that. But in that same vein, when that kid who came from nothing and nowhere runs into that kid who was spoon-fed, like, it's going to be a rude awakening. That happens to our teams all the time, right? We play these teams from out of town or whatever, from Charlotte or whatever, these kids who, like, they don't play basketball at the same level, but they're hungrier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mentality,
You know what I mean?
man.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like you can be as skilled as you want, but if you're not locked in, to your point, you're gonna get clobbered.
And that's
the
not
mental's
shown.
the mental's the separator.
Yeah,
Just my experience, knowing the levels I've played on, even professionally, like the mental part is the separator. Like I played against guys who were uber talented, had all the physical traits, like everything, but they were head cases. They couldn't get out of their own way. So I would say definitely, just from experience, the mental, to your point, man, it's a great point. The mental part is the separator.
Yeah.
Whether it's youth, high school, college, professional, the mental part is the separator. And if you have a really strong mental, along with that work ethic, and you have those physical traits, you're LeBron James, you're KD.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling you, man.
I mean, I tell kids that all the time. Like, the game is 80% mental, 20% physical.
Yeah.
Like, we can talk about the physical aspect, the skill aspect, all we want, but if you're not mentally focused on what you're doing and what you need to improve on to get better, it's not going to happen.
Think about how many well-coached teams with players who were just mentally, not even just tougher, but just
Focus.
focused and
Yeah.
smart. Wipe the floor.
With a lot of
You know what I'm
teams,
saying?
yeah.
Like, I mean, even with us, just because their basketball IQ is so just, I mean, it's where it needs to be, so they know how to pass and then cut. You know what I'm saying? They're not just going to pass it and just stand there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, I think that's, that mentality, man, that mental piece is probably the high level you get to even more important than the physical piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to the kids about one of the kids about when you watch professionals train and warm up, it looks slow, right? But like they're doing things at a pace and an intensity that you are physically and mentally incapable of.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing it for so long. And
Yeah.
so like when you see it on video, it looks one way. It looks slow, it looks to be at a certain pace, right? But you're not really understanding what's going on with the gears. To be a world-class athlete is to be able to, like, you can be ridiculously athletic. Like Russell Westbrook is a person that people will point to often, or Derrick Rose. Like Derrick Rose is probably a little bit smarter than Russ, but like Russ is pure motor. You know what I mean? Like he's just going hard all the time, and he goes hard at a level that allows him to get triple doubles or whatever. He doesn't necessarily have to think the game as much, right? But then to your point, when you combine the ability to think the game, like Steve Nash was not nearly as athletic, but he had an understanding
Two-time
of the
MVP.
game. Right.
Jason Kidd.
So those guys who are less athletic, they think the game at a higher level, or they are able to respond and read and see ahead at a different level.
Yeah.
So then you get LeBrons and Michaels and Kobe's
100%.
who are freakishly athletic and they're smart, and so they just play at a level that majority of human beings are never going to be able to comprehend. And so to that point, right? These kids, one of my biggest pet peeves with kids is warm-ups.
Yes.
They don't go hard in their warm-ups,
Yes.
right? Because they see these guys who are high level appear to be casual.
Casuals.
Right, but it's like
Hella cool.
they're here. They're locked in at a different level than you
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Like, and you didn't see what was happening before that. They were,
yeah.
you know what I mean. Their routines leading into being on the court and getting their shots up. And then again, like, so you might do the same series of shots that Steph is doing, but you're not making the same number of swishes that he's swishing. Like maybe you make the shot, but you're not making it the same efficiency that he's making it at.
It's really intentional.
Right.
I get it, man.
Like for me, even the high level, a lot of people don't even reach this, but like when I knew I had reached like the pinnacle of where I was going to go as far as basketball was concerned, was like the game completely slowed down to me when I was playing my best basketball. Like it was like a switch was, flipped. Like, and this, I can't even describe unless you've had it, I can't even describe it to you. Like, I really can't. Like, I'm telling you, it's so hard to describe because I'm literally I'm going full speed, but I'm like seeing everything in slow motion. And it's the most, it's just undescribable. It's the best feeling as a basketball player that you could ever come across. And you're not, you have to get to like you have to either play a lot of basketball, a lot of reps. But I'm telling you, like I can't even describe it. But I know a lot of guys I know who play high level and stuff like that. They've had that same feeling. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't even matter if it's just basketball, like football, any sport. Like they've had that same feeling that I've had.
And that's funny you said that because I literally had a discussion with my high school girls like last week. Like you got to have that type of focus where. Because right now we're on the topic of outside noise.
Yeah.
And so a lot of outside noise bothers them. And so like fans yelling or heckling or whatever.
And that's crazy. I'm telling you, man. I didn't even hear.
Exactly.
I couldn't even hear like the fans or nothing. I was like,
Exactly.
I mean, I'm playing like thousands of people.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
those are rowdy crowds who play
like,
that. Like,
machine guns and everything. But like my memory of it is like, even watching some of my old videos and stuff, it's like I'm literally just like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I can't, and I do hear the crowd and stuff like that, but like for me, I rose to that. Like I like that energy. Like that energy was good to me. Like I got nervous, but it was a prepared nervous. You know what I'm saying? Like I felt I did everything I was supposed to. Like I got all the shots and I got the extra work, and so it was like a calm and nervous.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like that stuff never bothered me, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't. You can't yell at me. You can say whatever you want. Like I'm like, it's like I got plugs in my ears. Like I'm still gonna bust his ass. Like we still gonna win. They not gonna stop me. And I mean, with our kids, man, I constantly like, listen, you wanna get to this level because there is no other feeling. Like this is one of the best feelings you'll ever have. But it's to your point. It's gonna be hundreds of thousands of reps, man. It's gonna be like insane amount of work. Yeah. But if you really wanna, get to that level, I promise you, what's on the other side of that is just like, it's very like rewarding.
It's hard to get there.
Satisfaction.
It's hard.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't want to go through that hardship of the whole thing. Like they see the professional athletes and what they're doing, but they don't see all the sweat and all the frustration that they went through behind that. So I think a lot of players don't want to go through that, but they want the rewards, which don't make sense.
Well, I mean, I think, as we wrap up, I think we can all agree, like 3 key points is, obviously clear communication from all 3, coach, player, parent. The expectations have to be clear too. I don't think those can ever be black and white. And, just making sure we're all, rowing that boat in the same direction. We don't want someone rowing backwards, we rowing forwards, and we're not going anywhere. We're staying, in place, sitting in place. So I think those are kind of like the 3 key points that I could think of. Like, any last thoughts from you guys?
No, I think that's it. Like, you got to make sure you're on the same page. And have a clear understanding of what the goal is. Yeah. I think that's a big thing too. Like, obviously kids want to throw out big goals when you ask them.
They always want to do
that. And then you got to roadmap that.
Yeah. Roll the ball out. Let me see how big your goals are.
And I think being clear with that too, like, helps them also, like, communicate like how to achieve the goal they want to achieve. Like, because I think nowadays a lot of kids say, "Oh, I want to play in college." Okay, well, do you understand the road to get there? So what they were saying was the roadmap, like, this is the roadmap to get to it. Like, what you gonna do? So
I tell them all the time now, especially when kids say that, I'm like, okay, what do you hate the most about basketball? Yeah. I hate running and strength training or whatever it is, right? I'm like, cool, so let me ask you this. If I told you that you had to run every single day and lose every game for the next 10 years, but after that you get a Division I scholarship, would you be willing to do it? And most of them, they sit there and they really think about it. Yeah. like, because that might be the price.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You might have to die every day and lose almost every game
100%.
And then get a scholarship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not always sweet.
It's not.
Not everybody gets the Cooper Flag story, right? Cooper didn't lose a lot.
Even when you get there, it's not going to be the same.
Right.
Like, it ain't going to be easy when you get there.
Yeah.
You can't just be satisfied with just trying to make a collegiate team. Like, you still got to do stuff to keep that scholarship. There's a lot of people taking it nowadays, so.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing for these players. We want growth. We want that opportunity, and most importantly, we want them to develop, under our umbrella. So, I think that's it for, this episode of Next Play, and like and subscribe to your YouTube channel.
That
And
notification button.
yeah, we definitely can't wait to shoot this third episode, and we're gonna definitely keep this.
Yeah.
Keep this coming for y'all. I think this is really good for the parents, for the players, for the coaches.
Give them something else to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. So, till next time, guys. Peace.